Welcome to the Women's Money Wisdom Podcast. I'm Melissa Joy, a certified financial planner and the founder of Pearl Planning. My goal is to help you streamline and organize your finances, navigate big money decisions with confidence, and be strategic in order to grow your wealth. As a woman, you work hard for your money, and I'm here to help you make the most of it. Now, let's get into the show. We've got a special episode today. I love to take real life examples of financial planning done well, and this is one of those. Our guest, Shelby Nicholl, is the founder of Muriel Consulting. She's got a boutique firm that works with financial advisors, a really terrific consultant. But we're going to get personal with Shelby today and talk about her experiences with a critical and really important and special family meeting. Shelby, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much for having me and giving me the chance to share this experience. I'm excited.
Well, give me a little insight. When we were just chatting as friends, you were like, oh my gosh, I have a podcast episode topic that I need to get out into the world. But basically, give us the lay of the land about how this family meeting came into existence.
Sure. Yeah. So this family meeting was aligned with my father-in-law's passing. And once we found out that he was sick, from the time that we found out he was sick and that it was very serious to his death was 5 weeks.
Wow.
And so it was very fast. Obviously, the family had to really adjust to that reality. And my father-in-law was incredibly brave about how he handled all of it. I mean, from the moment he found out he was sick and dying, and that there was essentially nothing that we could really do, he went into action mode to make sure that things were prepared well for his family. And so at about week 3, he called the family meeting. At around week 1, he told us, hey, we're going to need to have a family meeting. We need to go over the finances. At about week 3 is when our meeting was actually held.
Well, that's amazing. And I know for many people that use this episode as an impetus to take action, hopefully you will not be in that crunch time. This is really an episode that we can utilize, of course, for emergencies, but also for, just good family stewardship. And so he had the immediate insight and I guess the gift to know how to take action. But describe, first of all, like what family members were involved in this meeting. And then we can, kind of just unfold the value that it had for the family.
Yeah. So my mother and father-in-law had 2 sons. My husband is the oldest, and then his brother Paul. And at the family meeting we left the children out of it, the grandkids. So it was just the
Who are
sons.
minor age, I think, or
Most
very
of them
young
are
adult.
minors.
Yeah.
One is 25, and then there's 16 and 13 and 7, So, and I guess 2 13-year-olds in there. But, yes, we left the kids out. It was really just for the adults. And he called the meeting for a Sunday. Kind of a Sunday evening, and we had a specific meeting time that was pre-planned. And when we walked in, at this point, we had all had a couple weeks to adjust to the fact that he was dying. And so we knew that was happening. He also, by this point, had already started doing things like he cleaned out the garage and sold a bunch of things. He put a new roof on their house because we
Wow.
live in St. Louis and we get hail damage. And so, he knew his roof had hail damage and he didn't want my mother-in-law to have to deal with that afterwards. And so, I think in week 1, he had the roof being replaced. So he had started doing all of these things to get ready. And then he said, okay, we need to have the family meeting. Let's have it on Sundays. That work for everybody? Everybody said yes. All the little kids stayed home. It was just the adults. We walk in and he had prepared for it. This was not something that he was not prepared for. And by preparation, he had a handout. So he had a handout for each of us, single-sided sheet of paper, front and back. And my mother-in-law came around and gave all of us a pen so that we could take notes. And it was a presentation.
So he's got maybe had experience in the boardroom and he goes right into like this is gonna be an organized meeting, we're gonna get stuff done.
Yeah, yeah, and he did have a corporate career, you know, he'd had a corporate career, he'd retired about 11 years earlier from that, and he really took the lead position, as many families of that generation do, on the finances, on paying bills, on anything, related to computers, etcetera. My mother-in-law had had a couple of strokes about 8 years ago now, 8, 9
Mhm,
years ago, and so at that point, they had, of course, gotten everything in line. They'd always been really prepared. I think they had burial plots when they were in their 40s.
mm.
So they'd always had been thinking ahead and always felt like what you should do is prepare for the end of life, and that is a positive both for yourself. It's a responsibility you have, but also it's a gift to your family to be really prepared.
Okay, so what type if you're willing to share, what types of
Yeah.
topics were on the agenda?
Yeah, so we come in, we're sitting down, we start going through the agenda, and we started, in my opinion, like looking back on it and reflecting on how he organized this. We started with the easy stuff.
Mm,
We started with passwords. Like super simple, but he made sure to tell us like, "Okay, I've taken off the password of my phone. If anybody needs to get into my phone now, they can." Right?
that can
Here
be
he had
really important because so many things, even, like, trying to get to an operator sometimes after
Yes.
somebody passes away when you're like, "I just need help," and it's, like, really not fun, after you've
Yeah.
made several of these phone calls and have 10 more to go. Um, you constantly need that phone. All the same goes for, caring for a parent with diminishing capacity. So thoughtful.
Yeah, and then he had a password manager, so all of his, bank accounts, the cable company, the utility bills, all of that was dictated by a password manager. So he gave us, the information about the password manager and how to access it. So we went through all the password stuff first. Then we turned to the daily living bills. And he basically did a very simple cash flow statement. Here's what comes in from Social Security. Here's what our monthly bills are. Here's what's going to happen after I pass, what Social Security my mother in law is then going to receive. So he talked through that. Obviously alleviated that there's any worry about money for her. Like the daily cash flow is plenty and is
Mhm.
fine. And then he went into the medical directive.
Mm.
So we ended the fourth kind of topic was then really around kind of like the wealth planning topics and
Mhm.
and what he had accumulated. But we went into medical directive was kind of the third topic. In that second topic of practical life, daily bills, he also talked about where the accounts were, what everything was held in, how much was in sort of like a money market versus, daily cash in the checking account, where the checkbooks were stored, where we could find these records inside of his office. So super practical and down in the daily information.
And it's so true. Like there's the overarching, how are these accounts going to be managed, but what you really need as you go through transitions of responsibility like this are so many practical considerations like where is that bank branch? If there's a safe deposit box, which is becoming fleeting but still exists in some cases, that key is critical. Those types of things can be really important.
Yeah, and so we went through all those daily life bills. It also let us know which ones of those were like in his name. Many of them were going to need to be kind of switched over to her name, et cetera. So it gave us some of that context. Then we talked about medical directive, and medical directive was, I think, one of the most important conversations that we'd had. There, I think anytime you're talking about medical directive and you're talking about, well, what does life support really mean?
Mhm.
It's incredibly important to know, like, what does life support mean? I think I not only had my father-in-law's illness and death, that was in, September. My aunt had a heart transplant in November
Mm.
of last year as well, and it was so interesting then knowing what I knew about medical directive stuff and then seeing her, I was like, "Oh my gosh, we could have even had a better conversation on medical directive.
Hmm.
Does a feeding tube, mean life support? Does giving fluids mean life support?" Like, these are some of the really nitty-gritty decisions that the family could be faced with that can mean different things to different people.
Mhm.
And so, we had a medical directive conversation. We understood what his wishes were. He didn't really want to be kept on life support. I think he would have said yes to liquids, and maybe some nutrition, but not to much else.
Mhm.
Would have been his conversation there. We also talked about what happens after death. Like, what were the services that he wanted us to have? Where was what were we going to do, like burial and cremation, and then what happens also after my mother-in-law passes. We really had all of that conversation at this time.
That's terrific. For those of you listening, I think we can wrap it up later in the conversation about the critical value of family meetings like this, but also these practicalities are some of things that really offer tremendous compassionate companionship, I think, for the people that end up being caretakers and ultimately, in many cases, are left with decision making powers that can be very uncomfortable if you're not confident that the person asking you to make these decisions really wants you to make these choices too. I can just think of a friend who was, the named responsible person in a medical directive who had to make decisions about end of life decisions and how much it stays with you. But I'm sure that these conversations were comforting.
Yeah, and I think too for us, we had, he had two children. There's two wives. He had two sons and two wives, and we all want to do what is the right thing for them, but we also all have our own emotional journey going through this too.
And personal
And
experiences that may, even in the same family, may be very different in terms of
yeah,
perspectives.
we just felt like it put everybody on the same page, and then there wasn't going to be any disagreement between the kids about, does dad want ABC thing to happen, or did
Hmm.
dad not want ABC, right? Like, this gave us an opportunity to get everybody on the same page and in the same room and hearing it all together. And, we felt like it set us up, for a really successful experience in that transition and his death. And it set us up that we would always be on the same page in this way and not have any consternation about, oh, I wish we'd done something differently,
Hmm.
or um, any disagreement, any tension between what between the parties. Like, we knew what he wanted.
Really interesting and really helpful. So
Yeah.
you did the
And then
medical directives, and then where did the
mhm.
conversation lead?
And then the conversation, the last piece that we had to cover off on was on sort of like the wealth planning
Mhm,
aspects. And this is one where I know my father-in-law would never have had the conversation with the family when he was well.
mm,
It was, in their family, the dynamic was very much like, you'll find out when we die. Our money is our money, your money is your money, and you'll find out stuff when you need to. Well, my father-in-law in this case knew he was dying and decided that we did need to know. And so it became this really wonderful experience where he got to celebrate what he had built during his life,
mm,
but in a way that was really comfortable for him. He wouldn't have wanted the kids to know really in advance, but I do think it made him happy to be able to share what he had built over his life and the moves that he had made in the finances to create, an inheritance for the family and to create a generational transfer. And
so you're describing it's not just a list of accounts. He's actually giving you a narrative of,
yeah.
I you know, this was you know, this was money that I used from this to fund that or things like that.
Yeah, and it was in his case, he was such a millionaire next door. It was
Mhm,
really that type of mindset, and they just worked really hard and were very diligent savers, and they built a nest egg that was amazing, and he got to celebrate that just a little bit.
and what a gift to
And
pass that down from
mhm.
generations because, perhaps, his grandkids or their kids won't necessarily have the same struggles or humble beginnings because of generational success. And sometimes, in research shows that, kind of having that legacy story can be really critical in, kind of understanding the meaning of money and reducing entitlement. So, what a gift to have
Yeah.
received that information.
Yeah, and then it let us celebrate what he built,
Mhm.
It gave us an opportunity to get to say thank you, and this is amazing, and look at what you did,
Mhm.
which was really, I think, just really it was a way to say thanks in a way that didn't catch everybody off guard, and it was lovely. And then my father-in-law, he was born in Belfast,
Mm.
Ireland, and had come here, in 1975, as an immigrant. My mother-in-law had been born in the US, but her family was all from Belfast as well, and so had been back and forth, and so they are really very Belfast oriented, and my father-in-law is was very British and wasn't a big hugger, things like that. And so after he was able to share everything that he had to share with us, the practical matters, and then, the gifts that he had been able to build over the lifetime, he then said, and kind of closed it up with I think through this experience too, I'm going to become more American. And,
Um,
you know, and and I haven't said it enough to my sons how much I love them.
oh.
And then he gave them both a hug and said, "I love you," and gave us all hugs and said, "I love you." And like the things that were always a little bit hard for him just growing up the way that he did, we were able to have those moments. We were able to celebrate him. We were able to get everybody on the same page and have this beautiful meeting where we knew there wasn't going to be any strife after.
Mhm.
And we were able, to say, "I love you." And it was just a gorgeous experience. We were also able to take notes along the way. We were able to make suggestions along the way. Have we thought about doing it this way or that way? And, it was just incredible. It was such a gift.
Well, so, um, your father-in-law passed away not long after the meeting, a couple weeks after the meeting, right? How has that conversation and family meeting impacted everyone that's still here afterward? How is the family working
Yeah.
together today?
Yeah. The family is working together really well still. I mean, I think losing your dad was really hard on my husband and his brother
Mhm.
and on all of us. And losing Papa Harry was, it's left a big mark for all of us. I think what we have realized through this is that Papa Harry's real legacy, though, is in the care for the family and in being an amazing parent. Like he prepared all of this documentation for us and prepared us as people for his end of life. It enabled us to not have to go searching through those papers. We didn't
Mhm.
have to worry about where the bills were and which bills needed to be paid because we knew everything. Um, and it was truly like his his legacy is in being a better parent than his dad was, and then in his sons being amazing parents, and he was able to say that to his sons. And then now starting to see it in the next generation. My 25-year-old stepson has a baby, and so we're able to see it with my grandchild and how Patrick is raising him and the practical matters and how it's practical and loving and doing all the things and showing up all the time. And I just feel like what Papa Harry did was really set the expectation for how we care for one another as family members.
That's so special, and yeah, I mean, you're describing values that are enduring across generations, and so much of family governance, especially for families that are have the gift of wealth, whether it's, self-created or inherited, or in many cases both, is to have that cognitive insight to understand your shared and collective values and to be able to pass them along can help to create a legacy as well as more successful stewardship of wealth. So to hear the anecdotal example in real life where all of this is coming together to have a powerful and really positive message is just so special.
Yeah, it's been such a special experience to be part of it. My husband and I are a blended family, and I haven't been a member of the family. I mean, it's been 8, 9 years, something like that. So it's not like it's been a short amount of time, but I haven't. It's was so incredible how they one welcomed family in, but also how this family operates. This family operates with such um, with boundaries
Mm,
and yet still also a lot of transparency. And so it was interesting to think about like the family values, right? It's definitely family and being a good parent. Like that is top of top of the list. Being a good father in particular and running that down through the generations. We have amazing fathers in this family. And then now to be able to be part of this experience, it's really changing. It makes me think about what are the other values that we want to land with our kids and what does that look like? How do we make sure that we all carry on Papa Harry's legacy of being an involved father and grandfather? And how do we show up in our daily life for our children? And then also like, hard work is a value in this family for sure. A little bit of scrappiness and making do with what you have and then building that into something beautiful is part of this family's values. And how do we continue to carry that on? Um, but it really is around family clarity and being it's the whole what is the word? Clarity is kindness,
mm,
right? Like this was the most kind thing that someone could do at end of life, and that was to bring their family into the conversation.
it's
Sometimes we think we should leave them out, like, that's kind,
mhm.
but it's not, it just makes them struggle after. This was incredibly kind to get everybody on the same page and to clear up any questions that we had while we could.
Do you think that this experience, and I love that you use the word experience because that's really what it is, and, when we talk about, experiences have more impact and power than things, what an example. Do you think you will conduct your family affairs when age appropriate with your kids, um, differently or maybe even earlier because of what you learned from this experience?
Yeah, I think it's a really interesting question, and it's a hard line. I don't know that anybody has, like, the right answer on it
Mhm,
because you don't wanna I think for us, like, hard work and making it on your own and having a good career and things like that are values and that we want our kids to have. So it's gonna be this question about how much do we give versus how much how do we enable their success without giving them too much?
mhm.
That's gonna be something that we already even struggle with, right? Just because you can buy them the item doesn't mean that you necessarily should buy them the item. And so, that's a conversation that we have. I definitely we will plan for absolutely family meetings. We will plan that, if there's a case of unexpected passing, like, one of the things I think about a lot is like we haven't written the letters that we want to go in with our documents.
Yeah,
Right. And
I think,
so,
like, either a letter where, addressed to individuals, or a video, nowadays,
yeah.
both of those can be, r a terrific resource if there's conversations that need to remain unspoken during life or just, you're not ready to share. And family meetings or, family governance doesn't have to always be dollars and cents either. Like, you don't have to show everybody your account statements. You can do layers of, amounts of information that you share, but just even having family meeting to talk about what are your values or to do charitable donations together, make decisions together. There can be so much power in kind of introducing whether it's like appropriate for the family, the way the family approaches sharing information or age appropriate kind of get togethers that that are tangential to wealth, can be
Yeah, that's
helpful.
such a good point. I think about too the medical directive stuff was really impactful
Mhm.
because I do think while you have these documents and they say certain words, there's a lot of gray area about what those words actually mean. Like, what does life-saving devices even mean? Does that mean a trach, as an example?
Mhm.
In the case of my aunt who had the heart transplant, she needed a trach. Yes, it meant that. And that was okay and
That's
fine.
part of the
And
treatment, not part of the
it's
problem, right? Like
yeah, yeah. I do think having some nuanced conversations about that could be also really useful. Um, I just think it's a way to reduce the more transparency and clarity we can have, the less
Mhm.
friction and tension that there's going to be. And then two, I think about, their stuff was reasonably easy. It was 2 cents. It was, reasonably easy. Um, I think the one thing that my father-in-law did not get a chance to take care of fully that he probably wishes he did is he was a DIY investor.
Mm,
And so I think, had he had more time, we would have found a financial advisor for my mother-in-law.
mhm. I think, like, so in so many cases, DIY there's a cohort of people that DIY works really well, and there's an overlapping cohort of people that, like, there's a great tremendous amount of personal pride. It's, they're hobbyists, they really enjoy that too, and first of all, like, hopefully you've heard over the years, our regular listeners, like, that's just fine by me. The challenge I see, because I see, like, some outcomes later is, planning for incapacity. Um, Setting an expectation within a family that, the passionate DIYer, that you shouldn't pay if you're not that person. Like, your mother-in-law may have very different preferences about her level of engagement with the, decisions of buying and selling relative to your father-in-law and what he preferred. And also, just, in general, it's such a gift, and you're describing this to be organized. Because if
Yes.
had DIY'd, but every account at every place is there and you know it, and, you enjoy those chores of seeing that advisor and this annuity person, etcetera, that is not necessarily a gift to your kids that may be juggling family, career, and your needs, because of unanticipated diminished capacity or, dealing with an estate.
Yeah, and the one change that we made at the very end was also, what would happen to the IRA accounts.
Mm,
And, because I was there and because of the work I do with financial advisors and in our industry, I knew enough to be able to say to him, "Hey, I don't think it should be set up that way.
mm,
Let me go confirm with my experts just to make sure that my knowledge is 100%." I was pretty right. I was pretty sure I was right, but I did at least, reach out to a couple of people and confirm the understanding. But he did make a couple of shifts right at the very end
in
about
terms of,
how
like, beneficiary designations or something like that.
exactly.
Mhm,
Yeah. Instead of the beneficiaries of the IRAs going to the trust, they went to the people. And so
mhm,
we were able to, to make that adjustment, before he passed. And so, I do think, bringing in obviously an expert is something that we just didn't have enough time for while he was still here, but it is a next step. We haven't done that yet, but it is a next step. I think that's always another way of, creating clarity and kindness as well and
mhm.
taking care is making sure that the person who's going to have the new responsibilities is has the right support around them for the level to your point of engagement that they want.
Yeah, and I mean, everything you're describing is, all about the value of communication, and in
Mhm.
so many cases, whether it's culturally just a stiff upper, British upbringing, we Americans culturally talk about flashy money all the time, but we don't talk about the nuts and bolts of how things really operate. The millionaire next door is not flaunting their wealth, and so sometimes it's a mystery and, or a surprise, and this communication and, hopefully also, and it sounds like this was the case, kind of encouragement to continue the stewardship, but with, you know, with some flexibility for how things will be administered, um, is truly a gift to those who are going to be left to, do the management that really does take time and effort.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, the whole meeting was just incredible. We just had such clarity and transparency. And, my father-in-law, even over the next couple of weeks before his death, was still taking care of things. He was adjusting those beneficiary designations that we just talked about. He even paid a bill the night before he passed away. I mean, there's nothing that he could have wrapped up better, really. I mean, he did everything possible to make the practical matters as easy on the family as he really could, and it was just an incredible gift.
Well, if you're listening to Shelby's story and thinking, "I've got conversations that I don't want to leave unsaid," and or "I need to get more organized," you're probably not alone. For many of you, though, the people that may need to hear this, maybe family members that are more reluctant, or you're just like, I hope things are good, mom or dad, or aunt or uncle, but I'm just not sure. So feel free to share, this anecdotal, practical conversation. It's not telling anyone what to do, but I do think it's encouraging introspection, consideration, and, you know, uh, a pragmatic approach to action. So, hopefully, a few of you are inspired to initiate some discussions or have that conversation that is so important. Thank you for sharing such a personal story with us, Shelby.
Yeah, I'm so fortunate to get to share it, and, just can't say enough about what a wonderful man my father-in-law was and what a gift it was that he gave us.
Well, and let that gift keep giving with sharing in ways like this. So, thank you for yours and your family's willingness to share.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Women's Money Wisdom podcast. If you found value in this episode, the best way that you can support the podcast is to forward an episode to a friend or leave a review. Go to proplan.com and the podcast link to get all the resources and links mentioned. This presentation by Pearl Planning is intended for general information purposes only. No portion of this presentation serves as a receipt of or a substitute for personal investment advice from Pearl Planning or any other investment professional of your choosing. Copies of Pearl Planning's current written disclosure brochure and Form CRS discussing our advisory services and fees are available upon request or on our website platform at pearlplan.com. The information that we share is meant to educate and inspire, not serve as personalized financial advice. Everyone's situation is unique, so be sure to consult with your own financial professional for guidance that fits your life. And just so you know, the opinions shared in this podcast are Melissa's own and those of her guests. They don't necessarily represent any organizations with which Melissa is affiliated. For more important disclosures, please go to our webpage at pearlplan.com.